Hi everyone, Paula Harvey at Tejon Ranch Conservancy. Today we are going to do lesson 7 and it's called String Safari. Let's get started. So in lesson 7, String Safari, it's a 2-part lesson, and the first part is the journaling part. Second part, we'll be doing something else using the NGSS cross-cutting standards. So we're going to be using a loop of string today and studying one particular small area. It's connecting with a small patch of land, and you're going to explore your own tiny world. In it, you're going to create maps, drawings, and diagrams to describe your discoveries. We're going to start with a short exercise just to practice our observation skills. We're going to take a look at this wonderful painting that was painted in the 1500s. I want you to take 1 minute to talk to yourself. You're going to do self-talk. I notice, I wonder, this reminds me of. Don't just sit there and look at this painting, but really talk it out. I notice there are a lot of dandelion flowers. I notice that they look like they've all bloomed and they're working toward the stage where they release their seeds. Things like that. I want you to talk about it. And just for 1 minute, but it's I notice, I wonder, this reminds me of. I'm going to set my timer for you. So start. And 1 minute is up. So when we're observing things, if you can get into a place where you have little distraction and you can just sit quietly and look at something and really examine it and then look deeper into it and notice some of the things. You may have been looking at the painting from an artist's perspective and looking at the various shades of greens that are used to paint the various parts of the plants. Or you may have been looking at it from a scientific point of view, and maybe you would have noticed, I don't see a single insect in that picture. I don't know what it is you were looking at, but anything that you looked at that you noticed, you wondered, and reminded you of is exactly your thing and is totally right. So let's get started with our activity. In the activity, you can do this anywhere outdoors, and it should be an area that might be somewhat wild. It is much better to do it in a field or a vacant lot, any natural area that you want to do it in, rather than a cultivated area that is lawn and garden. It can be done in a cultivated area, but your discoveries about the wild areas is what we really want to focus on. So look for spots with different species of weeds and other small plants and unusual objects, perhaps like pine cones or lichens, mushrooms or rocks. Something that's going to be fun and challenging to draw and to study. You're going to need your journal, a length of string that is about 5 to 10 feet long, colored pencils, and a hand lens. And what you're going to do with that string, take it and tie the ends off so that you'll end up having a circle of string. Put your loop of string on the ground that you're going to study. The string has now become the boundary of your tiny world. Then use writing and drawing to record your observations within the string about as many subjects as you can. Look for plants, animals, natural objects, evidence of animals, or any other interesting treasures you can discover inside that loop of string. Observe closely to discover as much as you can within that string boundary. Use numbers to record the amounts of interesting subjects, the populations of things. And you can make a small map to show where those subjects appear in the circle. You don't have to make a detailed drawing for every subject, but you're going to want to make some magnified drawings of particularly interesting things. Within this assignment, I want you to create a chart or a graph. And here's my tiny chart for this area that I studied. If you're finding more than one of some things, you're going to want to count them. Within that small area, you're going to find many things that are repeated. Different kinds of objects, like maybe lots of pine cones or rocks. Count them and observe them and focus on their similarities and differences as we have in all of our previous lessons. You can create a graph or a chart for those counts. So here's how you're going to set up your page. You're going to start, of course, with your metadata and then your title, which will be String Safari. Then I want you to draw a circle in the center of your page. That will represent the study area of your string circle. Then I want you to draw 2 arrow boxes. Now, you're going to be writing inside these boxes in the next lesson. So you want them large enough to be able to write 2 or 3 lists of, a list of 2 or 3 things in each of those arrows. So your first arrow is going to point into the box, and the second arrow is going to point out of the box. And you're going to write over the first box in and over the second box out. Now, around your circle, you're going to make magnified and individual drawings of some of the things that you're finding within the circle. You're going to use arrows and labels to describe where they are found. And then you might find one object or an organism that's particularly interesting to you, and you may get lost in observing that one thing and spending a lot of time on that. And in terms of drawing it and recording your observations, that is perfectly fine. In fact, that's great. Now, at some point, you're going to say, all right, I'm done. This is where we're going to do something a little differently today. Even if you feel done, keep looking for things. You want to go beyond done. The feeling of being done is just a feeling. It's not real. See what interesting things you discover after you feel you are done, and mention that in your journal. Write the things that you discovered afterwards in your journal so that you can use those for part of your reflection. So here's my study area. You can see the string. It's surrounding some mosses and a nice big granite rock. That's what I studied. And it is in a wild area, but there's this very old bridge that that is next to it. It's not where the actual rock is, but right next to it. And all of the wood on that's all decomposing. So this was the area I decided to study. And I want you to take a look at my journal entry so you can see the elements that I want you to put in yours. First, I left those 2 arrows, the in and out, blank. That's for the next part of this lesson. Then in the lower right-hand side, I made a chart where I counted those things. This is the same chart that I showed you in a previous slide. The next thing I did is I magnified the plant, the flower, and there was a grasshopper right over here. So I magnified the grasshopper, and then I magnified a very tiny thing that I think might have been a flower. And unfortunately, my hand lens just wasn't strong enough. It was so small that I couldn't actually see the details of the flower. But here's some more. This is the plant itself. I was curious about the yellow on the plant, and I thought originally that was the flower. But when I looked at the hand lens, I discovered, no, that's just the tip of those leaves of the mosses, and they're yellowed. And then right over here, I found another thing. And so this whole thing that I outlined here with what I noticed is this close up. So there's several magnified parts there. And then I stayed longer and I noticed things and started to add to them. I thought there was only one leaf. Turned out there were 5 dead leaves there. The more I looked at it, the more I started seeing things. And then I also added what other things I saw. So right here, I saw the flowers and the seed pods after I thought I was done. So this is where I mentioned that part. So now it's your turn. You're going to title your journal entry String Safari. Then use that string that's about 5 feet long to create a boundary and focus on your tiny world. Create a map or a diagram of the areas that you're studying. Make a chart or a graph where you can record populations of things that are found within your string boundary. Create magnified drawings of the things that you find particularly interesting or important, and then use arrows and labels to draw lines from your magnified drawings to the places in that circle map. Again, ABCs, 1, 2, 3s in a drawing, and this time go beyond done. When you think you're finished, take a few more minutes and find more things. You're going to be surprised about that. How to plan your page for this. Start with your heading, the metadata, and then the title, String Safari. Draw a circle in the middle of your page, add in and out arrows on either side to be completed with the next lesson. Include your ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and your picture for each subject. Use the next page for reflections, for your reflection questions and for your reflection paragraph. And don't forget to add this lesson to your table of contents once you're done. A reminder of what your metadata is: the day, the date, the time, your location, which includes the habitat, and the weather, the temperature, the wind, and the percent of cloud cover. Another reminder, for every I wonder, try to add 1 or 2 hypotheses that might be what you think actually it could be, and start with the sentence frame, could it be? We're trying to get into the mindset of a scientist who has to come up with maybe this possibility, maybe that possibility. You want to get into the habit of doing that. Then you can start searching and finding what the real answer is. As in the last lesson, I want you to remember the things that we've already gone over, and I want you to include some of these in your journal entry to make your journaling more scientific. Compare and contrast, zoom in, zoom out, patterns, cause and effect, systems and system models, structure and function. And then at the end, you're going to do a reflection. It needs to be in question-answer form. Question-answer form is using all or as many of the words in your question and put them in your answer so you don't have any questions about what the question was. It's part of the answer. Answer all the questions, don't pick and choose. They all have a purpose. And then put them in an order in which they make sense. Just number each of those questions or the answers. And then after you have answered them, rewrite them in that order. Start with the topic sentence. Here's the one I just threw in for you. Use it or don't. I studied a tiny world inside a circle of string. Just an introduction that lets us know what we're about to learn about. And then a closing sentence. And I wrote, I was surprised about all the things I saw within such a small area of space. Just a way to close up your paragraph. Here are your reflection questions. How did limiting your observation to the area inside the string affect the way you observed? Was it different than the way you have been observing up till now? What questions do you have about what you found in your loop of string? It's always my favorite question to ask you to tell me your questions. What did you discover when you went beyond done? Remember what I said before, make sure you write down the things you found beyond done, because that was going to be one of your reflection questions and probably one of the most important questions of your reflection. Did you see any evidence of things that are changing in your observation area? And how did you tell that it was changing? And if you came back in a week, do you think you would notice any changes in the area that you studied? What might those changes be? And that's it for Lesson 7, Part 1. Part 2 is coming right up. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.